Let us execute an immediate, sweeping analytical vector shift away from standard, tranquil composition registries, calm, creative writing handbook pamphlets, and peaceful boilerplate essay indices, and plunge straight into the high-octane, calculation-heavy tracking grids of fortified regional isolation traps, weaponized manuscript suppression loops, and the fiercely protective, dangerously fragile world of an endangered collection of raw operational trauma survival and razor-sharp procedural recovery networks running a raw tactical survival loop. We are crossing the threshold directly into the hyper-monitored, paranoia-slicked parameters of a scorched, high-density speculative fiction containment layout, exploring the lethal analytical parameters of a devastating, multi-layered structural reconstruction and tracking matrix with The Replacement, a short story. The exceptional, pulse-pounding, Gothic-tinted contemporary tactical instruction manual and comprehensive baseline endurance compendium, engineered by the absolute, undisputed global sovereign of breathtaking literary secrets, razor-sharp narrative traps, and high-velocity structural friction, Liv Constantine. This high-stakes narrative tracking sequence delivers an exceptional look at an operational crossroads where an endangered primary investigative asset running an unyielding truth extraction loop, a calculating, manipulative shadow network of an elite localized publishing conspiracy, and an absolute defense against an encroaching, past-confined psychological erasure containment zone collide at terminal velocity. Let us map the strategic narrative grid. If you are an elite enthusiast of high-octane, slow-burn creative journeys, where endangered, hyper-observant protective author protagonists must navigate an absolute maze of rigged aesthetic perspectives, corrupt identity dossiers and historical outline files, and a deadly ring of active personal deadline frame-ups while running a blind survival loop inside a completely compromised media ecosystem, where an analytical mind uses deep psychological profiling, calculated technological rescue boundaries, and absolute emotional stamina to outmaneuver an invisible predatory executioner asset, weaponizing highly advanced individual profiling ambush timing and dark generational cover-up mechanics, and where the author utilizes an incandescent, meticulously paced, locked-in studio enclave incubator, tracking a vulnerable trauma survivor and a scarred literary partner who deploy advanced procedural analysis and clandestine corporate alliances to systematically forge a seemingly impenetrable defense before crossing a terminal exposure milestone, diagnostic routine to test our hero's structural limits. This book is engineered to lock you in. Constantine completely dominates the high-precision, unreliable witness jeopardy meets suffocating narrative erasure puzzles dynamic, capturing the heart-racing intellectual momentum, suffocating blank-page paranoia, and heavy deductive depth popularized by classic and genre arcs like The Last Mrs. Parrish, The Stranger in the Mirror, The Last Time I Lied, and The Wife Between Us, while treating realistic baseline terminology logistics, complex dark possessive loyalty arcs, and protective high-density isolation extraction grids with absolute technical mastery. The narrative tracking grid zeroes in on the highly volatile calculation-heavy baseline of our central legendary powerhouse creative asset, operating under a severe calculation-heavy handicap of a total loss of public narrative control, absolute structural liquidation logs, and a hyper-visible targeting canvas within a cutthroat intergalactic matrix. Behind her rigorous daily footprints, defensive conversational shields, and sharp observation metrics lies an intricate matrix of hidden structural vulnerabilities, deeply buried survival instincts, and sharp, high-stakes tactical maneuvers. Her collective defense mechanisms are locked tight following an abrupt plot outline deviation sequence, struggling to survive an ongoing internal recollection event while managing a shocking series of counterintuitive statistics update reports. Her entire analytical focus strictly consumed by monitoring sudden threat vectors from a network of internal distraction forces, parsing complex behavioral shifts in her daily multi-timeline interaction loops, and shielding her vulnerable personal sovereignty node from being entirely wiped out by a ruthless syndicate-driven profiling offensive. The spark ignites when an unexpected high-frequency structural anomaly breaches her active scanning perimeter. While sorting through a series of routine daily operational constraints inside her highly monitored corporate refuge, our primary asset registers a total security breach when a newly unearthed vintage draft file initializes an irregular descent into active historical misconduct logs, systematically tracking hidden cyber intelligence profiling metrics, forbidden media secrets, and unvetted industry executive cover-up associations, forcing her into an impossible proximity tracking matrix with an oncoming narrative resolution. Behind the glamorous studio's pristine, high-gloss retro aesthetic majesty and elite tracking style lies an intricate matrix of severe ideological warfare and a cold, calculation-heavy target containment blueprint. As the hostile adversarial investigation phases enter an increasingly lethal terminal tier across a ticking clock timeline inside the dark studios, the unauthorized discovery of missing historical truth templates, hidden intimate motivations, and altered tracking templates reveals that her entire localized sanctuary was an explicitly engineered trap.
The standard boundaries of routine industry courtesy and peaceful professional compliance protocols crumble, and our central protagonists run completely out of standard diplomatic escape vectors. They are thrust directly into an active, invisible war behind closed doors during an isolated tactical broadcast showdown, where a highly manipulative psychological gaslighting matrix launches aggressive countermeasures to permanently suppress their survival data stream and execute their complete systemic erasure. The tactical parameters instantly explode as their social and survival war turns completely active, transforming the large dynamic tracking centers, isolated mountain cabins, and private fortified extraction rooms into a volatile psychological pressure cooker and a physical battle zone. Our protective, hyper-vigilant heroes are forced to deploy their massive intuitive tradecraft, elite behavioral mapping skills, and raw physical stamina to preserve their focus before their adversary's relentless, calculation-heavy proximity containment phase permanently deletes their boundaries. The threat vector remains purposeful and resolute, shifting dynamically through precise execution guidelines from initial tactical disclosures to final high-stakes ballistic confrontation loops across multiple unreliable points of view, determined to deploy deep sensory manipulation loops, continuous psychological gaslighting via corporate and structural distraction maneuvers, and persistent dominance to shatter their defense, only to realize their hardened survival protocols and shifting counter-narratives match their opponent's raw tactical speed step for step. Every midnight archival excavation of private ballistic database logs, every silent choice to stand off against an electronic apex predator behind standard structural barriers, and every intense moment of channeling raw, unyielding survival mechanics chips away at their reliance on original peaceful rules. What follows is an exceptional, high-stakes war of perspective, tactical position, and raw human grit. We watch the Predator Network's deceptive perimeters completely unwrapped as Liv Constantine reveals that the true victory requires more than just surviving an initial Week 1 ambush or managing an invasive departmental disclosure. It demands an absolute, uncompromising defense of individual dignity, personal truth, and systemic survival against a cold, calculating machine of regional manipulation and absolute structural supremacy. While our central characters smooth over each other's psychological and defensive blind spots with devastating analytical force, creating a fiercely protective, absolute wisp of dark possessive loyalty around their building creative survival alliance, a brutal series of close-quarters tactical confrontations and high-stakes midstream point-of-view shifts switches the clock into its terminal phase, proving that deep-seated obsession has tracked them to their final outpost. To survive the impending locked grid trap and permanently secure her sanctuary, our resilient protagonist must unleash an absolute, unyielding defense of her final boundary lines. It is a high-velocity operational strategy, psychological/multi-timeline counter-surveillance noir/deep-state media conspiracy mystery/high-velocity multi-POV syndicate intrigue puzzle masterpiece that treats deep relational logistics and intense structural friction with elite precision. The tension here burns with a sharp, calculation-heavy intensity. We are talking about that high-frequency, one unreliable witness lie triggers a fatal deadline showdown energy, where a sudden pause during an active franchise tactical briefing, an unexpected shift in an adversary's protective physical posture during a high-stakes standoff confrontation, or a heavy, possessive realization that an elite intelligence operative has completely mapped your personal coordinates carries massive structural weight. The author writes with an exceptionally fresh, vivid, and beautifully blunt voice, perfectly capturing the heavy, oppressive atmosphere of a private executive vault before a major corporate fallout, and the distinct, subtle scent of magnetic master tapes, old paper archives, smartphone glare, cold sweat, dark adrenaline, and pure, unadulterated suspense. What truly elevates this contemporary instructional marvel into elite territory is Constantine's unmatched ability to balance complex, high-stakes relationship dynamics and genuine protective tower tradecraft alongside a breathtaking narrative pace and deep emotional hooks. Our protagonists don't rely on unbelievable superficial Hollywood superhero action tropes. Their immense situational intelligence, strategic patience, and profound survival instincts match the complexity of the chaotic modern corporate and high society underworld they dominate step for step, making their choices to risk everything feel profoundly authentic and deeply gripping. The pacing moves with calculated momentum, tracking intense conversational standoffs and breathtaking tactical breakthroughs before ratcheting up to an absolute jaw-dropping conclusion that delivers total, hard-earned advancement to their horizon. The Replacement, a short story, is the definitive pro-level upgrade your high-stakes contemporary thriller and intense asset suspense library demands right now. It is elegant, immensely fast-paced, and utterly unputdownable. It proves that when your entire sanctuary is targeted by a cold, calculating institutional monster, the most revolutionary play you can execute is to lock your perimeters, trust your elite survival training, and fight like hell alongside your network to rewrite the data. So, secure your personal reading sanctuary, review your emotional defensive perimeters, open your Kindle, and prepare to track the fleet.